Hello, my name is Penny Sumners, and I'm a member of the Twickenham Town Chapter, National Society, Daughters of the American Revolution. And we have been putting together for America 250 a look at the Patriots from Madison County. And we are so blessed to have so many American Revolutionary Patriots to make Madison County their home for some portion of their lives. Now, before we get into who they were, I would like for you to think about these patriots and why they came to this country in the first place. You know that we have the 13 colonies, but before that, in 1607, Jamestown was founded in Virginia, and then in 1620, the Pilgrims looking for Jamestown ended up off the coast of Massachusetts. So that was 150 years before the American Revolution. So we have these people that came to this country. They came for different reasons. Some came for a new way of life. Some came for wealth, as they had seen what was happening with the Spanish and they were getting rich. And then some came for religious persecution. And so there were different reasons for people coming to different areas. But they ended up establishing themselves in these 13 colonies that you can see. And the British owned all of the land on this coastal area up to the Appalachian Mountains. On the other side is where the French owned. And they were fine until a lot of the colonists decided that they wanted some of the land on the other side of the Appalachian Mountains. This is one of the reasons for the French and Indian War that started in 1754 and went to 1763. And at that point, a war was fought. Of course, you know that as we call it the French and Indian War, in European history, they call it the 7 Years' War because they were constantly fighting somewhere. And this was just one theater of the war. Now, different from the French, the English colonists are going to bring their wives and their children. And so they're going to bring a whole family unit, which establishes a more permanence, while the French were fur trappers. And they sometimes married Indian women, but didn't usually set up in a community with the stability that the English did. Well, when the French were defeated in 1763, and the British now have up to the Mississippi River, and as you look at this, then you can see there's the Appalachian Mountains, and this was the Indian Reserve, but the settlers wanted to move. However, the British were not inclined to let them move because they had control and they could figure out what they were doing and kind of keep up with them. However, as they started to move, you notice that they're going to move on into Tennessee first, okay? And so when the American Revolution was fought from 1776 to 1783, all along that eastern seaboard, and now that the colonists had won, they could start moving, and they started moving. They're going to come up first into Mississippi, and they come along that Mississippi River. So the west side of Mississippi will grow first, and we were in the Mississippi Territory until Mississippi becomes a state in 1817. And then after they became a state, then we became the Alabama Territory until we could apply for statehood and became a state in 1819. Now, the next slide is the migration routes of why the people came our way. It was thought back then that when your land was no longer fertile and didn't grow, then you just got moved to new land, and there was plenty of new land to move to. So since there were no fertilizers, then your land got tired, you just moved on. So a lot of these early patriots that had fought in the war, they are going to move and bring their whole family. They brought their adult children and their wives and their children, or maybe they came with the whole religious group, but they all moved together. And they didn't just come immediately to Madison County. They moved from Virginia and North Carolinas and South Carolinas. They moved onto this way. They may have lived in one part of Tennessee, and then they moved to another part of Tennessee, and finally into Alabama. But many, many of these people are going to come the Nashville Road. If you see at the bottom, it says the Great South Road. We often refer this as to the Nashville Road. And so they're going to come that way. And then when the land office opened up this area, that a lot of people started flooding into Alabama, often referred to as Alabama fever. And they came this way because they had heard about the Great Springs. And so Big Springs had a great water source. Their climate was great. The fertile soil down here was perfect for farming. And of course, back then, most of these early settlers were farmers. So they started moving into this area. Now, the old Federal Road, or the Cisco Road, as it's written on here, some people did come from Georgia. And one of the people that came from Virginia and then on into Georgia was Leroy Pope, who was one of the founders of Huntsville. So as these people started moving into this road, as we were, Dorla, and she will be talking with you about different settlers. As we looked at this, we were amazed at the number of people that were coming from Virginia. And so as we researched, we found out that the number was over 500,000 almost coming out of the state of Virginia. Before we go to that next slide, telling you that, though, I would like for you to look at, this is the Alabama counties at that time. Now, this is in 1822, but these were the early counties in the state. And if you notice, there's a Decatur County. That only was in existence for about 5 years. But all of these are going to change, okay? If you also notice, and if you have looked at a history of different sites, often settlement took place on the river. However, in Huntsville, we did not settle on the river, as Decatur is on the river, Knoxville is on the river, and these different sites are on the Tennessee River. But Huntsville's source of water was very good, and they could get to the Tennessee River if they needed to. However, the Tennessee River is often referred to as the river that walked. And so every year when the rains came, it flooded and all out into the area. And so they had trouble even finding the main channel. Now, if you also notice that as you look at this, I want you to look at the number of people that are going to come into our area. if you notice this slide is of the whole state. And if look at the number of American patriots that the DAR has proven. Now, that's not all that are actually American patriot, but 114. And if you notice, the next county is Tuscaloosa with 38. So Madison County was the place to be back then, and they came, and they were the reasons that we set up a strong state. If you remember, of the 44 delegates to the Alabama Constitution, 7 were from the state, from Madison County. So we had a great number. The next county only had 3. So a lot of people were from Madison County, and many of them, as I told you before, happened to be from the state of Virginia. Notice that Virginia has this 500,000 people, okay? And of the people that we researched, and there's over 140 of them, and of the ones that we know of where they were born, 51 were from Virginia. And one of the reasons for that, of course, is Virginia's population was so much larger than everyone else. And as people had fought the American Revolution, and they were kind of now crawling all over each other, they needed to move for more land. Notice North Carolina has almost 200,000 with and 29 moved. Maryland, not a few, but not as many. And in South Carolina, if you notice that 180,000, over half were enslaved. So we're not going to have as many of those. From the state of Pennsylvania, we have a few, but not many. And then if you notice from the state of Georgia, that's just right next door to us, we only have 1. Well, if there's only at the most 33,000 people, they did not need to look anywhere else for land. There was plenty of land in Georgia for them to find additional land to farm. So Madison County has been the home of many patriots, and we feel like that's one of the strengths of our county, is that we are standing on the shoulders of so many American patriots, and we're very proud of that. And now Dorla Evans is going to talk with you about some of these very fine people who moved into Madison County.
Welcome to the second half of the Revolutionary War patriots who settled in Madison County. In the first part that presented by Penny Sumners, she explained to you what was going on in the country and why so many patriots ended up in Madison County out of the number that can be tallied for the rest of the state. The second part that I will address will present 4 different patriots, something about their lives and the service that they provided to the revolutionary cause. The first patriot we'll talk about is Richard Cabot. He was born in 1765 in Virginia, but we'll start really with his father, Moses Cabot. Moses Cabot was a member of the Washington County Regiment of North Carolina. When Tennessee was admitted to the United States in 1796, that area was called Sullivan County, Tennessee. Captain Moses Cabot served in a regiment engaged in battles and skirmishes against the British and Cherokee Indians during the American Revolution in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia between 1776 and 1782. Moses fought at the Battle of Kings Mountain in South Carolina. According to Richard Cabot's pension affidavit, Richard tried to enlist in his father's company as a 15-year-old. He asked his father's colonel to prevail on Moses to let him enlist. Moses said no because the settlement needed protection from the hostile Indians. At that point, Tories worked with the Cherokees to fight at the Nickajack. Most of the adult men in the area were already fighting away from home. The teenage boys were needed to guard the settlement and to farm the fields under threat of Tory-backed Indian tribes. Richard's service continued 8 years beyond the Revolution. Evidence of the extent of the threat from Indian tribes in Sullivan County to members of the Cabot family is found in the fall of 1793. There was a Cherokee attack on Cabot Station west of Knoxville, a fortified homestead owned by Alexander Cabot, who was Moses Cabot's brother, and his family. 13 members of the family were killed. Defenders of the frontier freed men to fight other battles during the Revolution and were vital to the effort. Richard Cabot died on November 11, 1844, in Madison County, Alabama. He is buried in the Cabot Boggs Family Cemetery in Meridianville. He married Rutha Millsap in 1781 in Virginia, and DAR considers him a defender of the frontier. Reuben Stone is our second patriot. He was born on 30th March, 1755 in Virginia. He was born in Virginia, but moved with his parents to Lawrence County, South Carolina. He volunteered to defend the county from hostile Cherokee Indians marching into Indian country. He served 6 months in this role. Later, he was a substitute for a friend with a sickly wife in South Carolina. He served in the Continental Line. In that capacity, he marched down the South Carolina and Georgia coast to Charleston, where he participated in the Battle of Stono Ferry in June of 1779, and then later engaged the British at the Siege of Savannah in September and October of 1779. After a futile march to St. Augustine, Florida, the troops marched back to Charleston. They were trapped in the Siege of Charleston, where he was taken prisoner by the British when the Americans surrendered. When he escaped, he returned to Lawrence County as his enlistment had ended. He did not re-enlist. He served 3 years and 5 months in the American cause, 2 years and 9 months in service to the Revolution. South Carolina granted him a 200-acre plantation, but at age 53, he left South Carolina for fresher opportunities. In 1809, when land sales opened in Nashville, he bought land in Madison County. In 1815, he swapped that land so he could enlarge his holdings near the Flint River. Reuben Stone died on February 9, 1849 in Madison County. He is buried in the Stone Fanning Cemetery in Madison County. He married Nancy Priscilla Fowler on June 14, 1785 in South Carolina, and served in the South Carolina Continental Line. John Aminette enlisted in what was called the Minuteman Service. That's the service in which men can be called up at a minute's notice. His company marched in a campaign against the Indians. They saw no fighting, but he was discharged when he returned. He later enlisted in the Virginia Continental Line. He marched through Maryland and Delaware, boarded a ship, and landed in Philadelphia. From there, he was marched to Trenton and joined the regiment in New Jersey under the command of Major Henry Lee. The regiment attacked a British fort at Paulus Hook, New Jersey on August 19, 1779. In the night, they took 168 prisoners. Congress was so well pleased that it voted $40 to each of the privates engaged in it, which John never received. The Democrat, a newspaper in Huntsville, Alabama, wrote an obituary for him on April 11, 1833. And I think the obituary is interesting because it says something about John Eminette, but it also says something about what was important to people in that period of time. So this is verbatim from the newspaper. Suddenly, at his residence in this county, on the 30th of March, John Eminette, in the 82nd year of his age, thus another revolutionary spirit has sunk into its rest. Rarely are we called to record the death of a more virtuous man. He was a citizen of his county upwards of 20 years. In the domestic circle, he was a kind and tender father, an affectionate companion, a social and obliging neighbor, much beloved by numerous friends and enemies. And enemies he had none. In youth, he boldly met the foe and nobly defended the cause of liberty. Few have ever so well prepared for their last great change. He settled his earthly concerns, ate a hearty supper, called his family around him, addressed the throne of grace, lay down in perfect composure, fell asleep in the arms of his Savior, and awoke in the paradise of his God. Thus died Mr. Eminette without a groan, and left a wife, 4 children, and numerous friends to mourn their loss, which is his infinite gain, and he now reaps the just reward of his labors. Henry Harless was born in 1752 in Augusta County, Virginia. His parents were John Philip Harless and Anna Margareta Price. His parents immigrated from Germany to Pennsylvania in 1738 and later moved to Virginia, where Henry was born and grew up. In 1772, when he was 20, Henry married Charity Anders. Their first child, David, was born in 1775. Their second child, Henry Harless Jr., was born in 1777. The Revolutionary War began when Henry was 24. During the war, he served in 3 different Virginia militia companies. He served under Captain James Byron in Montgomery County, Virginia, and under Captains J. Taylor and J. Preston. After the war, Henry was a Virginia farmer. Around 1800, he moved his family to Knox County, now Anderson County, Tennessee, just northwest of Knoxville. Henry and Charity had 7 living children at this time. Henry and his family farmed land in Knox County from 1801 to 1811. Charity died in Knox County around 1809. Subsequently, Henry and many of his family members moved from Tennessee to Madison County, Alabama. At the time they arrived, this area was still the Mississippi Territory, as the states of Alabama and Mississippi had not yet been created by the Congress. Henry settled a few miles northeast of Huntsville. His will, filed in 1815 in Madison County, names many of his children who had moved with him to Alabama. Henry Harless is buried in Bellevue Cemetery on Bell Factory Road in Madison County, Alabama. His will is on file in Madison County. The U.S. government and the DAR provided Henry's 1988 gravestone because of the efforts of Mrs. Madeline Evans. His grave was marked on October 10, 2020, by Twickenham Town Chapter of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution and by the Tennessee Valley Chapter SAR, or the Sons of the American Revolution. So that concludes our presentation on the Revolutionary War patriots who settled in Madison County. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.